What's going on, everybody? So, Kevonstage, he's back at it again with another podcast, talking on to another podcast. And the conversation that he's bringing up is in regards to homophobia, the black church, and what Jesus would do if he had a podcast. So, let's go ahead and just get right into it. This is actually going to be a two-parter as far as the topics that we're going to be covering. And as usual, I'm just going to go ahead and give my 2 cents on both of them as we go along and towards the end of each of the segments. But let's just go ahead and get right into it. As always, if you guys like this type of content, go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Let's check it out. All right. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is kind of the black church and how and the question was, which I didn't like, was in regards to, is there a good return on investment with the church now when it comes to the black church, which is a whole thing of itself. But the main thing that we want to focus on right now is Kevin's response. And when it comes to the black church, which is interesting that he mentioned this, when it comes to the black church and their viewpoint back in the day, and maybe still now on homophobic topics and just the LGBTQ in general. Let's go ahead and check it out.
And all of that. I just thought that was interesting. I want to ask you about something else, specifically about the church.
Okay.
You just made this really cogent and interesting analysis about everything that we got from the church.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when I'm in criticism of the church, which I am quite often, I don't think about those things. I don't think about the cultural things that we harvested from the church.
Yeah.
A lot of people think about the things that the church harvests from us.
Yeah.
Money, influence, power, all of that stuff. And I think now, the Drewski skit, other things, because we're not in the church like we used to be, and because almost everything is up for analysis and over-analysis, we're asking questions about whether or not the church is worth it, whether or not we are actually getting a return on our investment for what we've put into the black church, and whether or not the structures of the church are serving the black communities writ large the way that they should.
Now, I'll have a very interesting question in regards to that. What did he mean by return on investment? And this isn't a question in regards to him specifically and like trying to debunk, because that's what I did initially. I'm just like, what is he talking about? Like in return on investment when it comes to church? There is no return on investment when it comes to the church. That's not what the church is here for. But he also did mention that he is very skeptical in regards to the church. So it makes sense that he would make this type of comment. And to my reproach, when it comes to that comment, is what does he think the return on investment is when it comes to church, when it comes to the black church? It based off of what I've seen in some of the churches, the sense of community seems to differ. And that's not even just with the black church, because you have these type of issues with the white church. The idea of what is it doing for the community? I feel like less so for the community, because with the black church, it may be so solely focused on the community. So much so that I get this feeling that some black churches, not a lot, let me just say some black churches start to move away from the scriptures, which is why we come together in the first place. Interesting thing that people should consider doing, because apparently I make it seem like I'm sinless. But anyways, the thing that I would encourage people to do is to read the book of Acts, when the first assembly of God's body really came together after Jesus was crucified and he went back into heaven. And with that, later on, the books and the scriptures that the Apostle Paul wrote were to the other churches: Ephesus, Galatia, Corinth. These were written notes to the churches. So you can also read on those and see exactly how we should be as a church, as a body. So it's important, again, to read the scriptures. Where's my sound effect? Where's my sound effect?
Read the scriptures
for yourself. Read.
Look, guys, we need to read the scriptures ourselves if we really want to see. And honestly, this is kind of what not entirely, but once I saw exactly what a church was supposed to look like, it made it easier for me, or at least not what a church is supposed to look like, the template of what a church should look like. It made it easier for me to locate the church that I'm at now, because it's a matter of following the word, having the community, actually caring for people, not really having drama. It's in the bylaws that of the church I go to now that we should be able to have conflicting conversations, but at the end of the day, still love each other, even if it means that we still disagree at the end of the day. Or if I did something wrong to you, I should be able to come up to you with no problem and talk to you about the situation. This is what true brotherhood is. This is what true communication with other people in the body of Christ should be. And this is what it means to love one another, to have this communion with one another, to come together and to worship God. That's literally what church is all about. We do things together, so we make sure that we're all good, thus financially and, whatever support that we can give, all that good jazz. But that doesn't trump the main purpose, which is coming together as a unit to give God praise. So when it comes to the return on the investment for the gentleman that was asking that question, to me, that's what the return on investment is and should be for the church. But a lot of people may feel otherwise. And of course, what I said is still pretty broad. We can narrow things down, but that should be the return on investment. I just wonder what his thought process is on what that should be. But let's continue.
One, what do you think about the conversation? And two, what case do you make for the importance of the Black church today?
Whew, great question. I'm going to make a parallel between the Black church and Black parents raising kids in poverty, and specifically so it can be relevant to my life. I grew up with not a lot, discipline, getting whooped, can't ask questions, whereas I don't raise my kids that way, right? That same way. I both can appreciate and understand what my parents did, tried to do with their knowledge, and also recognize they got it wrong in XYZ way, right? But I also understand that they didn't necessarily mean harm and they didn't know no better. David So put me onto this idea that poor parents, not just Black parents, poor parents often ruled with fear because they didn't have time to discipline any other way. I can't explain to you why you can't do X, Y, and Z. Don't touch it because I got to go to work. I can't be with you. You're going to have to walk home from school, get that key in that house. Don't answer the door. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do that. Shut up. Don't question me because I said so, because I got to go to work. Not because I don't love you. Not because literally don't have the time to discipline you any different way. And I think the church has done a lot of harm, in some ways, irreputable harm, irrefutable harm, whichever word was correct there. And I think it's the same way our parents did a lot of harm. It doesn't mean they were all harmed, though. And it doesn't mean and at the same time, just because you didn't mean to do something, it doesn't, remove you from the harm you caused, right? I get in trouble all the time for talking about the Black church was homophobic, right? Black Christians hate when I say that, but it is true. I was taught to be homophobic sitting in church 5 times a week. That was what was taught to me. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. It was taught to me. I had to unlearn that because it's important to me that I am welcoming and inclusive of all Black people. That includes queer Black people. It includes trans Black people. If you Black people, you Black with us, it is my goal that you can come sit with us. Mm-hmm. I was not taught that. And it was reinforced from my family. I was taught Nobody's born gay. Even if you are, you're born into sin, you can get born again. Okay? If you are gay, you were molested.
Well, I mean, that first part is always true, but let's continue.
That's not the only way people can be gay. I had to learn that later in life. I was not taught that. And I realized as an adult, and it wasn't even the church that changed me. It wasn't my parents. It was the birth of my son was the first time I had a thought that was like, when I held my son, who is 19, it was the first time I had a contrary thought to something that had been taught to me. I was holding my son and I was like, yeah, I don't really care if this boy is gay or straight. This is my son. I'm not gonna, because at that time I started hearing people like, my parents they kicked me out for being gay.
Yeah.
Start to hear these things, right? On TV, movie, internet. And I'm like, dang, that's crazy. And when I was holding him, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. That won't be my thing. But I ain't say nothing at that time because I was like, I don't want to go against my pastor. I don't want to upset my family members and stuff. But it's like, so funny to me. In my actual family, there are gay people in my family just be like, we don't really talk about that, auntie. What you mean?
Yeah.
She been gay since the 70s.
Yeah.
What do you mean? This is our family member. Like in my family, trans family members, we just like, I don't see this.
The grotesque truce.
Yes. We just looking at it and we just like, there's no book there. I just put it down. Yeah. What you mean? So for me, I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm not going. And it's okay if you disagree with me. You can't whoop me. And the other thing, I remember I was getting taken to task by the gay community in the pandemic. And I was listening because I was getting obliterated on Twitter.
Because you said something? Or?
I was doing this thing called Theological Thursdays. During the pandemic, we was all creating. And I was a very curious person. I used to do a show called Ask A, and I had done Ask a Black Guy, Ask a Trans Person, all kind of stuff. And because I'm curious and I love to have a conversation, love to understand. And I had Jackie Hill Perry on my podcast trying to understand. She was like, I was a former lesbian, gave my life to God, which was the way you could be gay in the church. You could have been gay and God could have taken the gay away. We get you on that.
Yeah.
But you can't be gay.
Right.
Ben, yes. Be, no.
Right.
You cannot be. That's how we was taught. I'm like, but some people be gay. And I'm going to say one thing too, and I know I'm all over the place, but it's going to make sense.
Nah, we with you.
Went to a church. And I hate it because it's so stereotypical, but it is true. Our choir director was gay. This nigga was amazing songwriter, amazing arranger, amazing choir director. He wasn't like flamboyantly gay in the sense of like how movies make people, but he was very obviously gay. Our church was like, don't talk about that, but do be a part of the choir.
Do part of your job.
For me, it was incongruent to me that we can use your gifts, but deny your humanity. Like he gay, but he writing them songs, and them songs are moving people, right? I mean, we in here crying to his songs, his arrangement. God is using him.
Yeah.
You can't make me believe I didn't feel what I feel. Tone has a song called "Make Me Over." I'm talking about God himself spoke through Tone to me about my sins. When I listened to it, when I found out that Tone was gay, he did an interview about it. This song is very clearly about, could be interpreted, you know my other side, I can no longer hide. Hold on. You was telling us right then. So I don't discount everything the church is, but I also cannot not acknowledge the harm that was done. And I think you hold space for both of those. I do.
Okay, so that was pretty heavy. I'm going to start this off. So when I was growing up, and like he's saying, clearly Tony is like a lot, not too much, but a couple years, probably like 40s, probably pushing 50, something like that. And I'm positive that I will say for certain that it's easier to be gay now than it was in the past. Why do I say that? Because people are more openly gay. Before, it was pretty hidden, unless you were in like Los Angeles, where I think they have some areas where it's like everywhere type thing. But back in the day, back in my day in the 90s, I know for sure being gay was not being gay, depending on where you were, was like being black, depending on where you were. It was like being Haitian, depending on where you were. You were a minority and you were picked on. And to some people, to some people, especially back then, it there were some deaths. There were some deaths, not a lot. There were some deaths. My first interaction with somebody that was gay or had very, I guess, what's the best term? Flamboyant characteristics was when I was in elementary school. I was in, I want to say, fourth or fifth grade. And there's one guy, Gus. I knew from the jump that he was different. I did not know what being gay was, but I knew that he was different. And I knew that he acted different than most boys. Why? I don't know why he was doing that. I didn't understand it until everybody kept saying, "Oh, he's gay, he's gay, he's gay." I didn't know that's what that was. But even then, he was just flamboyant. It was never like, "Oh yeah, he actually likes guys," because I don't ever recall seeing that or him saying that. And I was the only person that he talked to, or the only person that would talk to him without, trying to, poke fun at him or whatever the case may be because of the way that he was acting. Of course, elementary school is the 90s and stuff like that. So, it was what it was. Not to say that it was good and that it should just be, put to the wayside. No, but that was my first instance of seeing somebody that was gay, a live person that was actually gay, that was in front of me, that somebody that called me a friend. And it was just a interesting situation. He ended up not even staying at the school too long. I think within the year he had moved elsewhere. Of course, no reasons as to why. But I do recall days where he was getting picked on and I would have to like tell people, "Yo, relax, stop," and stuff like that. But then when we think about it, and of course, me being Haitian, I think about the Haitian church, and when it comes to them talking about, people that are gay, there was nobody at my church that I was gay that I knew of. And when it comes to Haitian people, I think it's worse than Americans finding out that you're gay. It was kind of like what Kevonstage was saying, except in Haiti, from what I recall, if you were gay, it was not good at all. It was not good. It was far worse than just being picked on. I think it was far worse than being picked on. They took that thing serious, like a witch, like those, what is it called, Salem witch hunts type situation. So it was very interesting that he mentions this when it comes to the church, because I never experienced this with the Haitian church. Same with like a lot of stuff. They avoided a lot of heavy topics. So talking about gays, talking about, sex, talking about, drugs and stuff like that. They kind of left it to the parents. And even then the parents never had those type of conversations. So I wasn't explained what those things were. I thankfully was given the definitions by the means of the world and by social groups. And luckily I didn't, take them and run with them. And like I was saying earlier, when it comes to the Black church and the way that things are now, I'm seeing that a lot of churches, especially the Black churches, are being a little more inclusive when it comes to the LGBTQ community. And churches, especially a lot of denominations, are being inclusive with the LGBTQ community. It's a weird situation. It's a weird situation. And in the next part, he talks about his cousin and his sinful life and the church accepting him. But kind of like here when he's talking about the choir director and how he was gay, but the church still accepted him, but told him, keep that part of you under wraps. At that point is given the idea that, okay, you're just using me for my skill and you don't care about anything else that I got going on. You don't even care of me actually finding, redemption from this. And that's the weird thing when it comes to life, when it comes to musician lifestyle in the church, is that depending on the church, a lot of times the musicians just get put by the wayside and they're just needed for their skill, and that's it. And it's unfortunate. But going back to the LGBTQ community, we of course see this a lot, again, with the stereotype of the choir director being gay in the black churches. I haven't seen that personally. I think one time I did see that was, of course, in Greenleaf. But I did come into a situation where one of the musicians, he, stepped down from his role because he was unfaithful with his wife. Great musician, great pianist, and all this stuff. Like, I'm like, yo, homie's the bomb. But the sin was there, and he stepped down from his role because he had the sin that he had to take care of. He had this looming sin that he had to take care of. That is correct, that nobody is sinless. But if you're active in your sin, then you probably shouldn't be leading the congregation. The same thing goes for the pastors who's on the pulpit. If you're active in sin, you shouldn't be on the pulpit. Which goes into the mindset of what he was saying when it comes to Jackie Hill Perry. I believe that with churches, you can come to the church and be gay. You can come to the church and, be lustful. You can come to church and be an addict. The important thing is that, why is it that you're coming to the church? Is it just a safe haven? Is it just to feel safe? Is it just to, make it feel like you've done something right for the week? Because if that's the case, then just like the same way with the person that's, heavy on drugs, or the person that's, heavy in lust, or the person that's constantly stealing or cheating or whatever the case may be, coveting his neighbor, all this stuff. The person that is active in doing those things, you're here for the wrong reason if you're just here to make yourself feel good because you're doing something that is deemed as holy. So you're going to the place of holiness and thus you feel okay for the week. You're here for the wrong reason. And I think this is where, especially with those of the LGBTQ community, because of the level of identity that they have with their sexuality, and because the community deems it and because it's been deemed as a sin, it makes it harder for them to go to a church and feel accepted, but they still go to a church because they want to still be accepted and do normal things like other people. But it's like the whole thing of coming to the church should be to be amongst those that are seeking to live a holy life. Yes, we still sin at the end of the day, but if you're active in your sin and you're not repentant of that sin, then you're at the building, at the congregation for the wrong reasons. And you're honestly, truthfully there trying to break the change. Now, if you're willingly there to seek change, then that's a different story. And again, I'm not here to just sit here and talk about everybody and what it is that they have going on. But the idea is that we go to church to find the truth, to read the scriptures amongst people that are also seeking the truth and renewing our mind with what's in the scriptures and how we should be living our lives. You see what I'm saying? It's it's nothing to do with being sinless. And I keep talking about this because I got this weird guy that keeps commenting on my stuff, and apparently I keep saying that I'm sinless. I don't know how. But the idea is I've been given the instructions on how to live a sinless, not less as in there's no sin at all, but we're trying to sin less lifestyle. It's in the book. And so I keep telling people,
read the scriptures for yourself. Read
the scriptures, everybody, because the instructions is there. As I continue to walk my life to live a more holy lifestyle, the same should be for everybody else who claims to be Christian, who claims to follow the way, who claims to be worship and children of the only one God, Yahuwah, that we all are here to live our life for. But y'all let me know what y'all think. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. Take it easy. Peace.